Good morning. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and some tips to help you guys on your fitness and your fat loss or your health journey. I'm getting myself live on Instagram, making sure I'm live there now that I know how to. I am live. We are good to go. Happy Tuesday, guys. It is feeling very much like fall. Yes, even in Florida, the seasons are changing. And I got some good things coming up for you guys in the future, especially if you are not living in Florida, where we are very blessed to be able to have access to sunshine year round and we can actually walk year round. I'm actually going to talk next week about what really causes holiday weight gain, and I don't think it's the food. But there are some things that are going to be coming down the pipeline for you guys to jump in on. I'm going to be doing a 90-day, 12-week-ish. Well, it's going to run from November 1st until January 31st, a calorie challenge. Keep you guys accountable to keeping your cardio up in the wintertime. And I'm going to talk more about that next week. But today's topic I want to get into is I want to help you guys understand how to set your calorie and your macronutrients for your specific goals. Whether you are looking to dial in for fat loss, whether you are looking at optimizing for health and performance, or you have more performance-based athletic goals that you are looking to dial things in on. And I want to start by talking about when this should be coming into play. I think that it's really easy for a lot of people to jump right into calories and macros, and that often leads to overwhelm. They get kind of burned out and they don't really stick to it. I think there are some foundational things that need to be addressed before we jump into calories and macros to ensure that you are going to be successful with it. And I want to start by kind of talking about those things. And you can hopefully, as you're listening to this episode, kind of check the boxes in your head of like, yep, I'm doing that, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. And the first one is just understanding what calories and macros are, right? So calories are a unit of energy. That's what gives our body energy to power through our day. Our macronutrients are the nutrients that our body needs the most of. That's why they're called the macronutrients. So protein is what helps immune function, building muscle tissue, hair, skin, and nails, keeping your bones healthy, a lot of those types of things, cell turnover and health. Carbohydrates are what primarily give your body energy. That's our body's main source of energy, but also provide our body with a lot of micronutrients. So a lot of our micronutrient-rich foods are also high in carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, whole grains. And then fats also high in micronutrients, but also important for cell protection and hormone function. And each of our macronutrients is going to have calories allotted for them. So your protein has 4 calories per gram. Your carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram, and your fats have 9 calories per gram. So hopefully some of this stuff is a review for you. And if it's not, I just want to put a plug out there. I do have a guide that I'm going to be giving anybody that wants it. There's going to be a link in the show notes, and I will walk you through all of this stuff so you don't have to think about, wait, what do I have to remember about all this stuff? Hopefully this is just a little bit of a review for you to understand. But when you understand that, you realize that macronutrients are actually a little bit more important than just overall calories, because it's kind of like, well, you can be spending money, but are you spending money on the right things? Same thing. You can be eating calories, but are you eating your calories from the right things? You want to make sure that you are getting the right foods in place. And so the second piece of this is knowing what good food quality looks like. And I'm not talking about organic versus non-organic, or, like minimally processed versus that. I'm talking about actually getting nutrient dense foods, making sure that you're getting enough food that isn't just macro based. So I can have white rice give me carbohydrates, but I might get more micronutrients if I'm getting in like some whole grains or some potatoes. So knowing what that looks like. And then obviously having a little bit of an understanding about food portions, whether you've been following more of a plate method and you're balancing your plate with protein, carbs, and fats, or you're using a system like you're tracking your food and you're just comfortable with tracking your food, which is going to be the next thing, which is before jumping into calories and macros, you got to get comfortable using an app that you've never used before, whether it's MyFitnessPal or Macros First or Macro Factor or whatever it is you're using. You got to get comfortable using the platform. And so before jumping into like all the other things, like those are some of the things that you want to think about as like prerequisites for this. But once you have all that stuff done, you likely have also made a lot of changes to your nutrition, and that you're doing the things to keep yourself healthy, right? You're eating balanced meals, but you don't know if you're eating the right amounts of them. You're definitely being accountable to, obviously, hopefully eating more at home, not eating all of your meals cooked out. And all of that stuff kind of runs into like the prerequisites for this. But once you get that stuff dialed in, it is time to take the next step and actually look at your food quantities to make sure that you are getting enough. And if you're looking to optimize for fat loss or performance, this is the ticket. This is the magic button. This is exactly what you need to dial things in. There's no guesswork. If you're doing the right things with keeping tabs of your food, this is really going to take you to the next level. Now, a couple of things that people do wrong with this before I kind of get into this is they tend to really focus so much on numbers. And it's why I like to have all those prerequisites laid out first with like foods and stuff like that. And they get really meticulous with things. And I promise you, your body is not, you have a lot more leeway than you realize with your macronutrients, okay? You don't have to be obsessive with this. It should not be obsessive. It should more so be about awareness. And you should not always be tracking with the goal of eating less always at mind. We have to understand that optimizing macronutrients is important, not just for losing fat, but also maintaining it, which means you also want to understand how to optimize for health and hormones, and optimize by getting your metabolism living on as many calories as possible to be able to optimally fuel your day and not just always be living in restriction. When you're living in poverty calories, your body will respond and it won't spend as many calories. And that's when we start to have a lot of problems metabolically with hormones and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you're optimizing not just with fat loss in mind. And I do see a comment over here, and it is Judy Reed. What is up, my lady? I hope you are doing well. It's been a while since I've talked to you. I wasn't sure if it was going to be you or Holly. I figured it was going to be one of you guys. Judy, you were at the Crash Crucible last weekend. That must have been so much fun to watch. And big shout out to my client, Sammy Pugh, who annihilated it and came in 4th place after they seeded her in the pre-show statistics to be like 14th place. I'm like, this girl is so fit. They don't even know. But anyways, I'm going to go back on track. I just wanted to say a quick hi to Miss Judy. Anybody else watching this? I just saw a couple of other comments up here. I was in the games in 2010, 11 and team in the Masters. I've been forever chasing that. But one thing that has held me back is my body weight. I'm 5'6" and steady 200 to 202, need to be 190, and I know it. Okay, well, Irish Rhino, I do want you to reach out to me. And I love that name, by the way. And I would love to be able to kind of talk to you more personally about your goals. I will make sure I reach out to you after this and we can kind of chat a little bit more about you specifically, but shoot me a DM so I don't forget. But let's go ahead and roll into this, guys, so you guys understand exactly what we're doing. Okay, so I already mentioned that you want to understand that your macronutrients are what make up your calories. And I'm going to rewind this again and say protein, 1 gram of protein has 4 calories per gram. 1 gram of carbs has 4 calories per gram. And then 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. So if I have 100 calories from carbs or protein, I've eaten 400 calories from either of those things. If I have 100 grams of fats, I've had 900 calories from that. So you can kind of understand how that works in play with your macronutrients. And then before we actually get into optimizing, I want you guys to know what we're going to be looking for in terms of how to adjust, because when it comes to optimally figuring out your calories and macros, this is not just an online calculation. That's the starting place. It's kind of like if you're a CrossFitter, it's kind of like, oh, see, Holly's on. I said it was going to be you or Holly when I was talking about Judy. So, hey, Holly. Anyways, it's kind of like a CrossFitter. You go into the gym and you see the workout of the day is RX, right? But everybody in the class might be doing a modified version or scaled version of that workout that's going to help them get the most out of it. It's the same thing with an online calculation. Those are great baselines to start with, but we want to be able to adjust. So you need to be able to look at a couple of things that you're going to be wanting to watch along the way as you are optimizing your calories and your macronutrients for fat loss or performance or health or hormones or whatever it is. And so one of the things you obviously are going to want to track is your weight. When you guys are tracking your weight, you want to make sure that you are tracking your weight daily. Your daily weights are going to fluctuate, and what you're looking to get is your weekly averages. Your weekly averages are also going to fluctuate. And in a fat loss phase, we should be seeing them fluctuate trend in which direction. We should be seeing our weekly averages trend down. In maintenance, if we're looking to optimize for maintenance or performance, we want to be seeing that our weekly averages are staying about the same and we're still increasing our calories. The other thing to note about this, if you are a female, is also watching monthly trends. Okay, what happens to your weight around ovulation and menstruation? You want to watch those weight spikes as well. Normally, my females can see anywhere from a 1 to an 8-pound spike around their hormones, depending on changes in their estrogen and their progesterone levels. The larger spikes are normally red flags to me that we need to optimize something hormonally. Those women often also experience really rough periods, a lot of inflammation, a lot of cramps, a lot of bloating, very heavy bleeding. I don't want to get into a whole topic about the menstrual cycle, but I could totally do another episode on that. But we want to make sure that we're looking at those trends as well. And I look at that. So even when I have clients that are hitting plateaus, I look back at their previous month and see what their weight spikes were like last month. So I can kind of see, okay, is this a plateau or is this a hormonal spike? I actually feel like I know where my clients are on their cycle before they even know. Like, I'm like, are you ovulating? Like, it sounds crazy that I can kind of like pretty much like guess when that's going to happen. But you want to be watching your weekly fluctuations. You have to be honestly, this is important, you have to have a healthy relationship with the scale. Like, if you truly want to be able to optimize your body composition, lose body fat, you got to stop getting so conditioned to like be reactive to the day-to-day fluctuations. In fact, this morning I got on the scale and my scale was up 3 pounds, and I've had the worst headache since Sunday. And all I know is that's probably a sign that something is not right hormonally for me right now. So I'm not being reactive to it. I'm not changing my nutrition. I'm not changing my training. I'm just letting it be what it is, and I'm moving on. Okay, so you need to get to the place where you can do the same thing, which isn't always easy. The other thing that you want to track, and this is really important because, again, it's kind of hard to talk about because we are all so conditioned to be detached from our own intuition, but we want to be tracking our biofeedback. Biofeedback is your energy throughout the day, your sleep quality and quantity, your mental focus and clarity, your energy throughout the day, how your workouts are feeling, your recovery, your mood, your motivation, your appetite, how much you're thinking about food. All of that kinds of stuff is important for you to be tracking and really looking at how changes in your nutrition are changing changes in your biofeedback. So we want to always make sure of all of that kinds of stuff. And Judy, I will touch on that. Is it hard to track trends when someone is going through perimenopause and having very irregular cycles? Not at all, because I still, Judy, we can definitely talk a little bit more about you specifically. I still can kind of gauge based on a client's compliance when their weight spikes are more hormonal versus when they're actually, this person's having a trend based on their other feedback, which is why all of this stuff is important too. So like looking at, okay, if your weight is up and you also are noticing that maybe your cravings are up and your energy's down and maybe you're a week late for your period or you're supposed to be getting your period and you're not, like those are signs that there's probably something more underlying going on. And you guys have to really trust, going back to the foundation, that I am doing all of the things in my nutrition. Like I'm checking the boxes, I'm weighing and tracking my food, I'm hitting the gym, I'm hitting my steps. So it can't possibly be that I'm gaining weight. That's what you have to look at the logic of, like, this can't possibly be a weight gain because I'm doing all of the things. Okay. So you want to be tracking your feedback. And again, like the best way to do this is just to kind of like do like a daily audit. Like I have a spreadsheet I would gladly send anybody for free, where you guys can just track your weights and you can track your feedback, and just kind of get a good gauge of things, because you want to be making sure that as you're optimizing, you know how to address that stuff. So that's the stuff that you want to be doing as a preliminary, because if you're going to be looking at optimizing, we have to know what we're looking for when we're making adjustments. Okay. So, and I'm getting really into this, guys. I'm not gatekeeping anything here, because my goal is not, if I can help you guys without you ever working with me, great. But I know that what I do is a lot more in depth, and I help you guys work through this stuff. So, but I hope that all of this is helpful for you guys. And this is probably something that you never actually thought about, because a lot of times when people talk about optimizing calories and macros for fat loss or maintenance, it's give me a calculation and let me follow it. And you're not a robot. Your body's not a robot. Like, there's a lot of factors. In fact, it's not just eating and training, right? Like, eating and training is great, but like, you train for an hour a day and you've got the other 23 hours of dealing with all of the other bullshit in life, right? That stuff is going to impact everything. So we have to look at that, along with, we're going to talk more about other things that impact your energy needs going into this now. Okay. So now that I've laid the prerequisites, right? We know we have to be covering, we know what we're looking to track. Now let's talk about actually figuring out how much you should be eating to reach your goals or to optimize for fat loss or performance. The first thing that we need to understand is your total daily energy expenditure. And there's a ton of different online calculators out there. Please do not look for a calculator to set your fat loss goals or your macros for fat loss. Literally look up TDEE, okay? And look up TDEE calculations using the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation, okay? That is going to be the most accurate one. And I don't want it to be like Joe Schmo's, macro split for you and this person's suggested deficit. Like, get all of the different headspaces out of it. In fact, even my headspace out of it. Like, I want you to go and get a TDEE, not a fat loss calculator, not a macro calculator, total daily energy expenditure using the Mifflin-St. Jeor equation. I can give you one that I would recommend. Again, just shoot me a message. Hey, Cheryl, which calculator should I use? I will tell you, okay? Your TDEE is the estimation of your basal metabolic rate, so that's your body's needs at complete rest. Often these calculations can be off, especially if you are a more active individual with a high training age or a long training age. You probably have more muscle than they are estimating, okay? But that's everything your body needs just to live, like keeping the lights on, okay? And then you've got your thermic effect of feeding. That's how many calories your body expends for digestion. Again, this is an estimation, but your food quality and how much you're eating is going to impact that. Somebody that's eating a very processed diet is going to be burning a lot less calories through thermic effect of feeding than somebody that's eating a very whole food, high fiber diet, just naturally. If you're eating a high protein, high fiber, whole food diet, you're going to be burning more than somebody eating the other diet. Okay, so we want to look at that. Also, your non-exercise activity. This is what you're doing throughout your day when you're not training, okay? Like how much you're moving throughout the day, what your job is like. Are you a construction worker, or are you a teacher, or are you like sitting behind a desk all day, like calculating numbers, right? What are you doing throughout your day outside of your training and your eating? And then you've got your exercise activity, which is how much time you're spending in the gym and the energy that you're expending through that. We also have to look at one of the things that is often not considered in this equation, which is the type of training you're doing and the stress response from that. So surely we can be training 60 minutes a day, all of us, right? And we can put that in there, right? But every person is going to be in a very different mental state and physical stress, right? Like, so the person going to a gym and they're like doing bodybuilding and they're at like an RPE of 8 and they're like doing a walk for their cardio is very different than having a CrossFit coach like telling you like one more rep in an AMRAP and you're like literally like ready to die, right? Like there's a very different central nervous system response, and you have to look at that because there is an EPOC and a post-exercise oxygen consumption and a recovery stimulus that is required for your body to recover from that. So it's also going to impact things. And that's why this TDEE is, again, just like that RX in the workout, it is the baseline. It is going to be adjusted, but we want to know where that's at. Okay, so let's just say the TDEE it gives you is 2,200 calories, right? Going back to macros, now you have 2,200 calories to work with. All right. And you have to get your macros from these calories. And you've got those protein, carbs, and fats. And I've broken it down. Okay. Your protein is, 4 calories per gram, carbs, 4 calories per gram, fats, 4 calories per gram. And I've got to budget that with my 2,200 calories or whatever it is. All right. Here's where we start to go into macros. So you want your protein to be set anywhere from 0.7 to 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight or your goal body weight. So if you have a lot of weight to lose, you can go a little bit lower on protein. Okay. You don't need to be, good morning, Jeff. You don't need to be hitting. So if you're a 200-pound female at 5'3", you do not need to be 200 pounds of protein. All right. 5'3", like think about an ideal body weight for that. Anywhere from like 120 to 140 is probably a good range for you. Okay. So like just looking at closer to goal body weight is a good place to start. More protein is not always better. I think that just getting enough protein is important. So if you're like way under that, shoot for the lower end with the goal of like increasing a little bit. A little bit higher protein is going to be a little bit more satiating in a fat loss phase. It's why a lot of coaches lazily will just push protein to keep a person off of allowing themselves to actually eat more carbs and fats. Whereas I'm like, hey, we need to find balance. You don't need to be just eating, freaking 200 grams of protein at 5'3". It does not make any sense. Okay. I'd rather you get those calories from other things. All right. So protein 0.7 to 1.0 grams per pound of body weight. So we'll just call it 1 gram per pound. I'm going to use that 5'3" female. Her maintenance calories are 2,200. Let's just say she's shooting for 130 grams of protein a day. Okay. So 130 grams of protein a day times 4 is 260. I'm doing math in my head. 260, 460, 520. So of her 2,200 calories, 520 of them are coming from protein. So I'm going to go ahead and type this in so we know how much she's got left. So 2,200 minus 520. So she's got 1,680 calories left for carbs and fats. Next thing we're going to optimize is fats. And let me just write that number down so I don't forget. Okay. Fats, ideally, we're looking at the low end around 20% of overall calories, and at the higher end around 30% of overall calories is the sweet spot for most people. Okay. So you really don't need to go over that. Anyone that tells you otherwise is probably selling you snake oil and telling you to restrict carbohydrates for an unnecessary reason. So somewhere in that 20 to 30% range is ideal. So essentially what I would be doing with that leftover calories, the 1,680, I'm going to go with 25%. I'm going to go right in the middle. Again, this is just trial and error. We can always adjust. We're going to figure out where the numbers fall. And remember what I said, this is not about hitting number perfection. We're looking to find a ballpark range. Right now, the first number we have is 130 grams of protein as a target. We're going to talk about ranges in a second. Of those 1,680 calories, we're going to figure out what 25% of that is, times 25%. And that comes out to 420 calories from fats. I'm going to divide that by 9 because there's 9 calories per gram. And that means that her fat intake would be at about 46 grams per day. Okay. So I would go ahead and type in, or I would just go ahead and write down 46 grams of fat. I hope I did that right. Oh, no, I didn't do that right. I'm sorry. I was using the remaining calories, but that seems very low. See, I made my own mistake. So 2,200, so times 25%. That should have been 550 calories divided by 9, okay? So her fat intake says 61 grams. So I'm going to just go ahead and make it an even number. We're going to go with 60 grams, okay? So I made a little mistake. She had 1,680 calories remaining. That's not how much we take the percentage off of. The percentage is off of the total number. So 2,200 calories. Right now we've got 130 grams of protein. Okay, that's about 1 gram per pound of goal body weight. And then we're going to set her fats at 25% of overall calories. So 2,200 divided by 25% is about 550 calories. There's 9 calories per gram of fat. So we're going to give her 60 grams of fat. Okay. Now we're going to take the remaining calories. So we've got 60 times 9 plus 130 times 4 because of the calories and the calories and protein and the calories and fats. That means of her 2,200 calories, we've already accounted for 1,060 of them. So the fats and the proteins are accounted for. So now all I'm going to do is take those remaining calories and divide that by 4, because there's 4 calories per gram of carbs. Divided by 4. So 265 grams of carbs. So her macro targets as a hypothetical baseline off of her TDEE would be 130 grams of protein, 60 grams of fat, and 265 grams of carbs as a baseline for maintenance, okay? Now, remember, this is not about macro perfection. Her calorie ceiling, we'll call it 2,200. If she's at like 55 fat and she's at 285 carbs, because that's what she feels good on, that's okay. If she's at 70 fat and 225 carbs, that's what she feels good on, that's okay. The goal is to be a little bit intuitive, build balanced meals, and looking at optimizing. Now, these are just hypothetical numbers, okay? Now, we have hypothetical goals in mind. What I want you to do now is actually take 3 days and without changing your diet, just track your diet. Like, don't think so much about these numbers just yet. See where you're currently at. Like, what does breakfast routinely look like for you? What does lunch and dinner look like for you? Actually getting an understanding of where you're at right now. Okay, what are you currently doing with your nutrition right now? Because I would not want you to go from 1,200 calories a day to 2,200 calories a day tomorrow. You're going to feel so full. Your weight's likely going to spike 3 pounds. It's going to freak you out. And that's not intuitive. Vice versa, maybe you're eating 2,700 calories and this hypothetical maintenance is way below where you need. Okay, so we want to take a look at what the data or what the calculations are showing, but also what our body is getting on a regular basis. Your current diet, as I already mentioned, plays a factor in your energy needs. Okay, so we need to have those two together. And your body has adapted over your diet. Now, the other thing to be mindful of here is I mentioned 3 days. If you know that you are notoriously under eating Monday through Wednesday, and then Saturday and Sunday, you're eating cheat days and you're eating way more calories, you need to consider those days as well. So I would recommend, if that's you, doing this test on like a weekend and a weekday. So that would be really, really important for you. Okay, so now you're going to have 2 things. You're going to have the average of like 3 or 4 days of your diet without any, thoughts in mind, and then an idea of where your total daily energy expenditure is. And you already know what you're tracking, your weights and your biofeedback. Okay, so we're looking at how everything is impacting those things, like your energy, your hunger, your digestion, what's going on with your weight. Okay, now we are simply going to start to make strategic adjustments to your nutrition, your current diet, to get you closer to your goal targets. It can be done a number of ways. You can completely take, 10 minutes and like tomorrow be like, all right, I'm going to start to dial in these numbers. I would not recommend making huge calorie jumps. I think 200 to 300 calories is the max I would make per week, and giving yourself an opportunity to adjust to that, unless you find that you are really starving or really full, would be where I would not do that. Or if you're having like other weird things going on with like your digestion or something like that. But let's just say, these were your target numbers of 130, 60, and 265. And right now you're eating 75 grams of protein, you're eating 120 grams of fat, and you're eating, 160 grams of carbs. I would probably start to just increase your protein and focus on that and decreasing your fat. So looking at where all of your higher fat foods are and starting to kind of work them down. Now, as I mentioned, the prerequisites here, if you have that foundation already laid, a lot of this stuff is a lot easier because you're usually not that far off in swings one way or the other. It's usually just either pulling back a little bit on certain portions or increasing a little bit at certain meals of like protein. So that's truly how you start to make adjustments. So now what you're looking for, okay? what I've spoken about so far is optimizing at maintenance. Now, just because you got to the 2,200 calories doesn't mean that that's your calorie ceiling. Okay. So, what I really encourage you to do is to keep pushing that number while ensuring, and this is even if your goals are fat loss, keep pushing that number and testing. Can I eat a little bit more? Can I eat a little bit more? Because if you can give yourself a higher calorie ceiling, it's going to make it so much easier for you to lose body fat. You're going to be able to have a bigger. It's kind of like going on vacation with more money, right? It's a lot more enjoyable when you don't have to be stingy with your money. Okay, so if you can keep pushing that up and your weight staying the same, do not be in a rush to go right into fat loss. You can go into fat loss, but it's actually going to be more beneficial for you to like take, even if it's 4 weeks of like, let me just optimize first. You're going to feel a lot better. You might think that your calorie maintenance was 2,200, but maybe it's 2,600. In fact, if I put my metrics into a online calculator, it will tell me that I burn like 2,200 calories a day. And I eat anywhere from 32 to 3,700 calories a day, depending on the day. Maybe on a rest day, I might be a little bit closer to 3,000. But, you know, and my weights, I'm trying to be in a little bit of a surplus. So it's just now starting to creep up a little bit. So I think maintenance for me is probably around like 3,000 to 3,200-ish. So still like 800 calories less that I would be eating. And that would be like, I would probably be wasting away. So definitely think about that as well. Okay. So now that you have your calorie ceiling, now is where we can optimize. Okay. So if your optimization is for fat loss, okay, all we have to do is drop anywhere from 300 to 500 calories a day and see how your body responds. And if you're somebody who maybe your calorie ceiling isn't very high, so you're doing this and you're like, man, my calorie ceiling is only like 1,900. Maybe rather than dropping calories, it might mean doing more non-exercise activity, which will end up being exercise activity. So maybe we are doing more low intensity, like walking and some lower intensity cardio just to get a little bit more of a metabolic burn. You know, that's the cool thing about going into fat loss is it doesn't have to always be about eating less. But if your goal is fat loss and you're like, okay, I'm optimizing, no, I'm hitting my 12K steps a day. I'm working out 6 days a week. I got my calorie ceiling and I'm ready to go into a little bit of a cut. Okay. I want you to really look at like taking a 12-week period and like you're dialed in. Like when you're dialing in for fat loss, you can't be half in and half out. It's just going to end up just crushing you. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect every day. I want to make that very clear. Being in fat loss does not mean that you can't go over on your calories. You can still see fat loss if you go over on your calories a couple of days, but you have to be committed to, all right, I'm doing this the right way. I'm committed to it for at least 12 weeks. I'm going to see this through. Okay. You're simply going to adjust by dropping 300 to 500 calories. So let's just say hypothetically, you know, your maintenance calories were this, you know, 2,200. We're looking at 130 protein, 60 fats, and 265 carbs. You get to decide, where do you want to pull back on calories from? You never pull back on protein, okay? And I will tell you this, you are going to be more successful pulling back fats for the majority of people than pulling back carbs, because carbs are your body's preferred source of energy. So your energy output will stay up higher if you keep those up. You will be less likely to have metabolic adaptations from undereating if you pull back on fats, because fats can be a little bit lower. Okay, but if I was this woman, I'm like 130, 265, and 60, I'm going to be like, you know what? I can swap eggs for egg whites, and I'm going to remove 10 grams of fat there. I'm going to switch from full fat dressing to low fat dressing, and I'm going to save 5 grams of fat there. And I can go to 45 fats by making those two swaps, right? That's how easy it is. Okay, so by doing that, I've removed 15 grams of fat. There's one way. That's going to remove about 90, 135 calories there. Okay. Now I'm going to look at where else I can pull back on. 265 carbs. Maybe I'm eating, 2 cups of rice at lunch, and maybe I'm having granola at breakfast. I can simply swap to a lower carb option. Maybe I'm cutting the rice in half with cauliflower rice. Maybe I'm switching to oatmeal versus granola, and I'm going to save some more calories there. So maybe I'm going to go with my deficit numbers are going to be like 225 carb, 50 fat, give myself a little bit of a ceiling, and 130 protein. Okay. So if I do that, let's see where that takes my calories. 4 plus 225 times 4 plus 50 times 9. That's going to take my calories to 1870, which is going to put me in about a 330 calorie deficit. Okay. So now it's just a matter of, I like to use the analogy of it's turning the pot of water on. It's not going to boil for a little bit. You just got to stay consistent. And every day you're going to step on the scale and it's not going to move. And you're going to be like, is this working? You have to trust that you are doing all of the right things with your nutrition. You have to keep your movement consistent and be very, very consistent with everything like clockwork, and watch the water get hotter. That's it. Watch the water get hotter. And if you stay consistent with that, you will see fat loss. If after 21 days of being consistent, yes, 21 days, you have had no movement, we got to adjust something. And this is where it comes down to, it's not always less is more. It's looking also at your metabolic type and how your body adapts. And sometimes your body adapts by burning less. I see this often. I'm dropping my calories, and now I'm burning less calories. So we have to look at smart ways to increase activity. It's also looking at compliance, okay? If you get lax with things, like you think, oh, so I'm just going to eyeball this and that, 330 calories isn't a whole lot, but it can add up very quickly, okay? A tablespoon of oil is 120 calories, okay? 3 tablespoons of oil a day, and you are already out of your calorie deficit, okay? A handful of, nuts is 120 calories, okay? You forget to log your tablespoon of oil, or your husband cooked and you didn't log the oil, and then you had a handful of nuts, and then maybe you had a bite of your kid's mac and cheese, right? Your calorie deficit, gone. And this is where it's like, this is not about being meticulous. It's not about being like precise. It's about being accountable to knowing that all of those little things are actually big things. You don't think that they're a big deal, but it's a small dose that creates the response. It's also a small dose that's going to negate it. So even on the weekends, like little things here and there, you're cooking your kids breakfast and you're having a couple bites of pancakes or whatever it is, that stuff matters. You got to understand that kinds of stuff. Okay. So that's a little bit about how to set your calories. Now, when you're in a fat loss phase, as I mentioned, obviously you don't want to live in a deficit for the rest of your life. You have to know how to get there and how to maintain that. And I could do a whole nother episode on that. Maybe I will. But my goal today is that if you are somebody looking to dial things in to figure out how much you should be eating, that you have an understanding of what that looks like. And maybe this sounds a lot more calculated than anything you've ever done. That's because your goals and your body require more than just some random online calculator and like you white knuckling your way through like hunger and just trying to grit it and bear it. Like that's not the goal of creating a sustainable plan. Creating a sustainable plan requires strategy. And this is a huge piece of the puzzle. And if you want a guide that kind of takes you guys through this, just shoot me. I put a link to it in my show notes here, but if you're on Instagram and you're watching live, just shoot me a message that you're looking for the macro guide and I will send it over to you. I am just putting some finishing touches on it, so I'm going to send those out on Friday. But if you guys have any questions about anything, I'm going to pop open the chat. Mr. Larry, after a week in Orlando, my scale was up. Did you go to Disney World? Or did you go to Universal? Or did you go to neither? Just going to kind of look at the comments. No questions or comments. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this topic? The main thing here is like, you guys cannot just continue to like look online for these like online calculations and not know any way of how to apply them to you. You really want to truly understand your body and what it needs, all of it. So you did everything. Did you go to Halloween Horror Nights, Larry? Oh, so much fun. I heard it was awesome. I did not go yet this year. I'm considering going. My brother lives in Altamont Springs, which is just a little bit north of Orlando, and I'm going there next weekend for his Halloween / birthday party thing. And I'm considering going the night before and hitting Halloween Horror Nights and then staying for his birthday. But just to be honest, the lines are what get me. And it's so expensive to buy the whole like fast pass whatnot thing, but that's definitely totally worth it. Just looking to see if anybody else has any questions or anything regarding this topic before I sign off here. Always looking to just chit chat with you guys too, though. So, all right, well, stay posted. I am going to be putting a couple things out next week. As I said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about winter weight gain and ways to avoid it. And we are going to be doing a challenge. It's going to be about 3 months. I don't have a really like clickbaity name for it yet, for lack of better terms. I really hate that kinds of stuff. But or whatever you want to call it, like a hooky name. Hello, J-Lo. Ooh, J-Lo. By the way, guys, did you know that J-Lo, not that you're J-Lo, she had like a 4-something mile time when she was in track? I found that out this week, and that's freaking amazing. Anyways, I'm going to be putting some plugs out for that. That's going to be going on in the wintertime. But if you guys have any questions about anything nutrition related, training related, life related, feel free to shoot me a message. And if you want a copy of the guide, also shoot me a message, or you can fill out the link in the show notes. I will talk to you guys all later. Bye.